Welcome, I'm the Deadwoodjedi. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video, and today what I want to do is I want to talk about Noelle and Sir Nicholas, and I want to talk about what we're doing as far as what we can expect to use them for in Clan Boss. It's kind of a very narrow look at them, right? Because I think if we look at these two champions, Noelle is incredibly good in a lot of different areas. Sir Nick, not so much. He's pretty much only useful in a Noelle Clan Boss team. So like, I want to look at these two champions so you guys have an understanding of whether it's worth your time to fuse them, whether it's worth your time to go for Sir Nicholas, and once you get them, what you can expect. And I think that's pretty important, right? You're using all these resources to get them. It's important to know what you're getting out of it. So let's start first off with what is it that we're giving up to get these champions? Because that's a huge part of this, right? Obviously, we had this Yuletide Titan event that culminates in getting Sir Nicholas. And Sir Nicholas is just not good. I know it kind of feels like he should be this amazing champion, but really he's not unless he gets reworked, which I don't really anticipate happening. But even if he does, it's not going, I don't know that, look, if he gets reworked, great. Then all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense. But typically, that's not the way it works when you have a champion that's this widespread, that's been around for so long that everybody knows. I just don't anticipate that happening right away, especially when you have a combo champion like Noelle that could really, do a lot of change as far as like the effects go and stuff, because Noelle's going to be someone we're going to be using in a lot of teams. Sir Nicholas, not as much. So if you bump him up, you make her a lot more useful as well. And there's some like, what do you call it? Like domino effects that could happen, unintended consequences from that. So I wouldn't anticipate Sir Nick getting a rework for at least a year. That's just my personal opinion. I could be absolutely wrong about that. I have no idea what they're planning on doing. But the point is, if you're getting Sir Nick, don't plan on him getting reworked. I think that's a mistake. And for the last 4 or 5 years that we've been playing with him, he just hasn't been very good. He has Unkillable, which is a unique buff for sure, but really he just hasn't been that good. And there's some unique things about his kit I will talk about. But the other part to this, of course, is that Yuletide Titan event, it just takes a lot of stuff because you have to get these points from pretty much every single dungeon and event. There's obviously some you can skip, but not a lot. And it becomes a pretty high cost to get that champion. So you need to be aware of that, right? If you're putting in that much effort for Sir Nicholas, you're almost definitely getting Noelle, and you're doing that, I would imagine, primarily because you want to be able to either you have like plenty of resources and it's not an issue, or you're primarily planning on using them for Clan Boss, which is where the two of them pair up most excellently. I think there's some uses in things like Arena as well, but I would typically imagine people are trying to look at them as a pairing for Clan Boss. Now, Noelle is a heck of a champion, right? I've talked about this before. I think she's phenomenal as a champion. When it comes for Clan Boss, she doesn't bring a lot of utility other than making Sir Nicholas really good. Now, the reason for this, right? Obviously, most of her debuffs are freeze and block buffs, things that aren't really helpful when we're talking about the Demon Lord Clan Boss, especially if you have an unkillable team, which is what you'd have with Sir Nicholas. So not super useful. The only reason why we really want her is for this A2 ability where she places increased speed for 2 turns and activates Sir Nicholas's unkillable ability. Now, the AI is a little wonky right now. It's supposed to get fixed in the next patch or so, and her priority will always be Sir Nicholas when he's on the team. That should be always the priority with her A2 skill. If that's the case, it's going to make actually using her and Sir Nicholas a lot easier than maybe typically we'd find. The trick is, and this is a really big addendum to this, like using them, it's going to be something you have to keep in mind and is going to be making any team with them really tricky. Not impossible. I've done it. I'm just saying it's going to make it tricky. This A2 ability books down to a 3-turn cooldown. Now, you could only book this to like a 4-turn cooldown, in which case she and Sir Nicholas would sync up perfectly. You put them in a 2-1 ratio team, right? You have to adjust some because of the speed buff, which again, tricky stuff. But then they would alternate unkillable abilities. She activates her skill, unkillable goes up. Sir Nick activates his skill, unkillable goes up, and you can alternate and keep things unkillable for you. But otherwise, it becomes really, really hard because that is going to be on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. Now, this is important to kind of keep in mind. The 3-turn cooldown when booked. Sir Nicholas, his unkillable ability is on a 4-turn cooldown when booked. So you really have 2 options to make this simple. The best option, book Noelle, get that skill to a 3-turn cooldown, and then don't book Sir Nicholas. Or just put one book, only one cooldown here on this A3 ability, right? You want that going on either a 6 or a 5-turn cooldown. If you do that, then the A2 ability that he has, which books down to a 3-turn cooldown, makes Sir Nick really awkward. What that would do is that would make this it would constrain things. So if this happens every 3 turns, then even if this is on a 5-turn cooldown, it would actually happen every 6 turns. The gist of this would be that you could time it so Sir Nick uses unkillable ability once every cycle of the clan boss, right? The clan boss has 3. Let me break this down. Clan boss has 3 attacks, right? Got the first hit, the second hit where he places debuffs, and then the stun hit, right? That's a cycle. And if you're going on a 2-1 ratio, every champion's taking 2 turns for every 1 turn the clan boss takes. So over a cycle, which is 3 clan boss attacks, your champions are taking 6 attacks because they're going twice every 1 time the clan boss goes. If Sir Nicholas's unkillable ability happens once on those 6 turns, then that can balance out nicely because, again, Noelle, if we remember, that A3 ability is on a 3-turn cooldown. So every time she uses this, Sir Nick's unkillable activates. If it's on a 3-turn cooldown, that means she's going to use that twice over the full cycle of the clan boss. And if Sir Nick is on a 6-turn cooldown, that's going to be once on the full cycle of the clan boss. So between them, you can block the 3 attacks, twice from Noelle, I should say, and then once from Sir Nicholas. So if you get these champions fresh, that would be my recommendation. Don't book the A3 of Sir Nicholas. You can put in 1 book, but no more. Noelle, you can book her fully. That would work out perfectly. You can have your team go on a 2-1 ratio. You have your 2 champs keeping you unkillable. The only other thing you would need with Lady Noelle is to bring a buff extender or another speed champion, but that's very normal compared to that's something we do a lot. We have Lydia unkillable teams using a buff extender. We have plenty of teams where you're using High Katoon to extend, right? That's a totally normal thing. We have speed tunes for that already set up on the website, so you can go check that out and figure out how you want to do that. That would be my advice to people. However, what happens when you book them both? Well, now it becomes tricky because Noelle's on a 3-turn cooldown. Sir Nick is on a 4-turn cooldown, and the cycle's 3 turns. It becomes really, really difficult to get that to link up. How can I have Sir Nick with a 4-turn cooldown use his unkillable ability on the times when Lady Noelle can't? There's only so many options here. First option, have Lady Noelle go at a 3-1 ratio. That's doable, but kind of silly, right? If I have Lady Noelle going at a 3-1 ratio, I still need to get someone to extend the duration of the buff. I still need someone to, not to mention all the other things. And the speeds are going to be incredibly high. Good work, but of course you have to get the timing of everything. But now we're talking about a team that's very similar to an unkillable team we already have in the Myth Air comps or the Myth Fu comps, where you have Demitha and a speed champion like Eris or Elva. Well, I think those teams are considerably better than doing one with Lady Noelle and Sir Nicholas. Just doesn't make any sense to do this, use her and Sir Nick instead of that. Doesn't really make any sense. So I wouldn't recommend that. Conceivable, haven't figured it out how, but I'm sure it's a possibility, right? You've got the increased speed buff from her. It's on a 3-turn cooldown. And if she takes 3 attacks every turn, that means she can also activate the unkillable ability from Sir Nicholas every single turn, blocking the damage from the clan boss. Not a bad way to go. The other option, of course, is to have her go on a 1-to-1 ratio, right? Every time the clan boss takes a turn, she does. So she would only activate the unkillable ability from Sir Nick once. And then you would have to, because if you can time it right, you can actually have that unkillable ability block 2 of the attacks from the boss. But then you'd still have to deal with the third attack. And in that case, you'd have to have Sir Nick blocking the third one with his own ability. And if I haven't made this clear already, the great part about Lady Noelle and her ability to activate Sir Nick's unkillable is it doesn't put that skill on cooldown. So you can have them working on different timings and make those work together. But again, if we're going to do that where she's going on a 1-1, then we'd have to have Sir Nick on a 4-3 ratio. That's a little tricky. We have plenty of teams that do that. But with her increased speed buff, which is unavoidable because it's part of the skill that we need, that can make the timing of it a little tricky. Now, I figured out how to do that for Ultra Nightmare. I figured out how to do that for Nightmare. The hard part is having one set of speeds that can do it for both. That I haven't been able to figure out. The increased speed buff combined with the low ratios that we're talking about makes it a little trickier than you might think. So that's not perfect, but it's at least doable. We go, oh, okay, I can at least, with that combination, even with low speeds, figure out how to take down Ultra Nightmare. And I'm actually very optimistic that there is a set of speeds that can be used for Ultra Nightmare and Nightmare. I just haven't found them yet. The negative with those kind of teams, though, is, of course, you can't really use those champions for anything else, because what ends up happening is you talk about very low speeds, like champions in like the 120s or 130s. And that is a little bit trickier because then they're really only useful for that one area of the game. It's a worthy sacrifice if you need to take down Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss. But it's something to keep in mind if you plan on using her in things like Chimera, unless you are comfortable swapping gear every week. That could be pretty annoying to have to deal with, and, you know, quite frankly, a little difficult. So those are kind of some of the things that we have to figure out, because that 4-turn cooldown from Sir Nick and the 3-turn cooldown from Lady Noelle, that's really tricky to make work together, especially when we're talking about the increased speed buff that she has. Now, the reason why I bring all this up is, one, I want to show how difficult it's going to be to make a clan boss team with them. And I bring that up primarily because I need everybody to understand, if you're going to build a clan boss team with those two champions, chances are you're going to need a third champion to go with them. If you want to build a 2-1 team with a speed champion like Lady Noelle that we have right here, you're going to need someone to either extend the duration of that buff or reapply that buff on their own. So I have been able to figure out a couple teams. Now I haven't done a video just yet, but I'll have a couple out in the next couple days talking about this and showing how it's done. But I've used it with like bringing in a Lydia and having those two kind of alternate their speed buffs to make this type of a team work. I've also done this with using someone like a Godseeker or a Corvus is especially good, extending the duration of the buffs, the speed buff, and allowing a team like that to work. The tricky part with either of those teams is, of course, that there's not a lot of champion slots left, right? And the way that I have those teams working is I have Sir Nick on a non-2-1 ratio, either on a 4-3 ratio while everybody else is going at a 2-1, and that was not an easy speed set to find, by the way. Or I have Sir Nick going on a 3-to-2 ratio, which is tricky, but requires him to be fully booked because we're utilizing the cooldown ability of his A2, which again is on a 3-turn cooldown, to make sure that he keeps the unkillable buff up at the right time all the time. The point is, it is doable, but it is also tricky. And in order to do it, I need another speed champion or I need another buff extender. And so that leaves you 2 slots of champions with which to keep the team, well, not only to deal damage, but also to cleanse the debuffs that you come into contact with, especially against Spirit Affinity clan boss. That's where it gets a little bit tricky. So just want to keep that in mind. If you're going to be building a Sir Nick Noelle team and you're trying to 1-key Ultra Nightmare, is it possible? Absolutely. Is it going to be crazy damage? Probably not. And the big reason is you really only have room for 1 damage dealer on your team, because you're going to need to bring in somebody to deal with the debuffs and to deal with the stun. And so that's going to be the trick of that kind of a team. Okay. So as long as everybody kind of has an understanding of that, I think we're going to be in good shape. But I felt like that was fair warning for people that are doing, especially with the Summon Rush coming out today. Felt like it was very fair warning before you blow all of your resources, just to understand that it isn't going to be a simple, easy thing to do. But I have been able to do it. I have been able to build a team that works for Ultra Nightmare, works for Nightmare. I think it's full auto, using a buff extender with Lady Noelle and Sir Nicholas, and they are able to keep Unkillable up. And it's a 1-key team, at least with my gear and my champions. You know, your mileage may vary depending on who you're going to use, but like, it's definitely doable, but it isn't a simple, easy thing. And I think that's really important to just kind of keep in mind as you're trying to figure out how you want to go about doing this stuff. And so that's it. That's the video today, guys. It's nice and simple, really easy, but it's more of a PSA warning, I guess you would say, about building them both for Clan Boss. It's going to be a little tricky. 4-turn cooldowns and 3-turn cooldowns, they just don't work great, right? And it's very simple math-wise if you think about it, right? If the Clan Boss it cycles every 3 turns, and that's what we base our teams on. If we go at a 2-1 ratio, that means we're getting 6 attacks every turn. You divide that by 4, you know, because of the 4-turn cooldown for Sir Nick, he can place Unkillable 3 times. Lady Noelle can place it 4 times. But the problem is, when do those times sync up? They'll sync up once every other cycle. They won't sync up the same time every cycle, because that 4-turn cooldown means he can place Unkillable 3 times, right? Sir Nicholas can place Unkillable 3 times, but it won't always sync up, because one cycle he's going to place it on the first attack and then the last attack, and then the other cycle he'll place it on the middle attack. If you can't sync up when that Unkillable goes, so it's on the same attack every single turn, because Lady Noelle will be on the same attack every single turn. And that is really, really important, because you have to be covered for the whole fight. That's one of the things that makes Sir Nicholas really, really tricky. And pairing him and pairing her, it doesn't work perfectly. It takes a little bit of turn meter manipulation, takes a little bit of speed manipulation, takes some real speed tuning to be able to make it work. I've been able to figure it out though. So like, don't worry, I'm going to have a couple Clan Boss teams coming out, hopefully over this weekend for you guys. You have an idea of how these teams could work. You can see how effective they are. But I just wanted to, before I actually do the video on that, while I'm still building the teams out, I just wanted to give you that quick little PSA, so you guys aren't, you know, putting in too many resources too quickly and then going, oh no, this isn't going to work for me and my team. You're going to need someone to block debuffs. You're going to need, or at least cleanse. And even that could be a little tricky with stun targeting. But you're definitely going to need somebody that can, you know, extend buffs or add increased speed on their own. So it's not, and you're probably going to need a pretty good damage dealer as well. Is it doable? Absolutely. Do I still recommend it? Sure. You're still struggling with Clan Boss? This is one of the best gifts of the holiday season. You're getting 2 champions that combined can give you an unkillable team. That's a huge accomplishment. So often it's just getting the right champions, and these 2 will work well together. It's just not going to be the simplest thing. It's not Wixwell, right? It's not just Wixwell and you're like, okay, now we're done. And I think that's just important to kind of keep in mind. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys that PSA so that you're not getting, you know, to have your expectations set at the right level. And like I said, I will have some Clan Boss videos for these 2 champions coming out hopefully in the next couple of days. I still have to record it, but I think we can get them out in the next couple of days for you guys, so you have an understanding of what's coming up for you this weekend. Anyway, that's all we got for today. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys and you enjoyed it. And until next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.